My friend Kate Chadbourne has a channel on YouTube you should check out, especially her playlist called Creative Hurts and How to Heal Them. You got to use your brain to make yourself happy, you know? And you can't listen to what all the naysayers say. You know how they say it's like, F the begrudgers. Because there are lots of people who say you can't this, you can't that, you shouldn't spend the money, you shouldn't upgrade, you shouldn't. Oh my God, everybody's just so fearful about things. They're even fearful about writing or committing to a lyric or, here's an idea, You got to break free and just create. It's just so fun. But I highly recommend you watch those videos. I watch them often because they still help me again and again. Because Cindy was such a computer person and totally mad about all the Apple stuff, she said, you should move to Logic. That's where everything's going. This was the early 2000s. So in 2005, I made the jump, got myself a iMac and Logic, and stopped recording directly to ADATs. I kept a few of them just so I can access my other tapes and transfer things and make some things digital. And I did that for a while, finishing up different things and putting out different records. All along, I was moving too much because every place I lived, it was like the landlord wanted to go condo, or the condo was being sold, or the house they were renting, they decided to move back into. They weren't going to sell it after all. And it was just like 7 or 8 moves in 10, 11 years. It was pretty insane. So when all your stuff's in boxes, all you can do is write songs, and work. So I was teaching and writing songs and gigging a lot. So that's why there's just so much that I can be recording all the time, because I might be writing new ones, but then there's that other song that I've always loved and still hasn't been out anywhere, hasn't gotten a decent recording. The only way to capture my ideas in those early days was on like a little cassette deck, those dinky ones. So all my demos, my just written versions, the first time I'm playing those songs, are on these cassette decks that are, very noisy and stuff. That's why I was so excited about digital and the quality of CDs and working in Logic, because there was no tape hiss. That was a really cool thing, because I didn't have all the Dolby and DBX noise reduction things that people had on the bigger tape machines. So unfortunately, in 2005, it was very expensive to go analog to digital. And in those days, and still some people today, they tell you don't go back and forth between analog, digital, converting this, converting that, back to analog, back to digital, in and out, in and out, in and out, that you're really disturbing the chunks of bits that make the sound, I guess. But, I could kind of do a fair bit of that being hybrid. And for some reason, I only thought about having a big 5-foot Studio Master console mixer for mixing. I wasn't thinking of it in terms of tracking. Of course I tracked through it on tape, but I didn't realize that I could tape or track through it to get to an interface, then to get to Logic. So I had gotten one of those Tascam, was it 1228 or 1448? There was some kind of little mixer, and it was supposed to be a digital controller as well as a mixer as well as an interface. And they didn't really have that together. It didn't really work that well. It was always supposed to be automated, so the faders were always jumping around and doing things you didn't want them to do. I couldn't get it to clear the memory, start fresh, and do what I wanted to do for each song. So that didn't last long. And then eventually, even though I was selling a bunch of outboard gear, I started getting outboard gear again, because it became possible to go through the gear to get to the interfaces. So instead of that Tascam as an interface, I got the Apollo Quad in 2014. And I didn't realize that Logic came with plugins, let alone Apollo came with plugins. There's all these legacy plugins, yet I was buying all these plugins, and I didn't even know what the gear was in those plugins. I wasn't familiar with an 1176 or a Fairchild or a Hewig Child or any of those things. I didn't know what any of that stuff was back in 2014. I was learning it very, very quickly. The only equipment I had access to was like Alesis and DBX 166s and things. I didn't know about the real stuff, the LA2As and the. I wished I had a vintage King Audio near me where I could go in and touch all the gear and see which one actually felt and sounded better and which one I wanted. But you can't do that. Even some of those high-end places don't have things set up ready for you to play and look at. You have to order things, and then they special order it because they don't have it to sell it to you, and then you're almost required to buy it, so it's okay. I just buy a lot of used stuff and get discounts on things when I can, and turn other gear into new gear. It's like you don't have to be afraid of letting go of something if it's going to be a major improvement, especially. I don't really regret anything I've ever sold, other than the Studio Master console, just because I was so impressed with it. I would have gotten another one, but they didn't make them. They weren't making big analog boards, so I didn't know what to get to go with this reel-to-reel. I was using an Allen and Heath, which sounded really good, but this has so many more connections, so I wanted to be able to do the in and out thing with the box and stuff.